All right, let's move on to the backdoor cut and things going on in the NBA and the playoffs, which have been very entertaining. Before we get to the actual X and O's of the NBA playoffs, it's been very fun seeing actual fans in the stands for these contests. It has been something that has been much wanted by everyone involved, just watching these games. And I respect to all of the teams, the administrators, the fans themselves getting vaccinated or being healthy, taking care of their end of things. Seeing the atmospheres in New York for the Knicks when they faced Atlanta, Phoenix when the Lakers and Suns played, just these incredible atmospheres of basketball that we are seeing from all of these fans being in attendance. Philadelphia playing Washington, even Brooklyn, even though it's a younger fan base, a little fickle. It was good seeing fans in the arena for the Nets. So I'm just very excited about all of that stuff. I think when you look at the playoffs, and I'll just give quick impressions of each of these contests. If you go to X's and O's of it, we'll be here for 3 hours. But I just want to give my quick impressions of where these series are. I think Milwaukee is really asserting themselves into the dominant team over Miami. That was a very close win on the first game one. It was 109 to 107. Chris Middleton with the 3-pointer with about a second left to go in the contest proved to be the game winner for them. Last night, Milwaukee won 132 to 98. I don't think it'll be a sweep. I think Miami has enough talent to win a game, but I think this ends in five in on a very quick way. I think Miami, if going to be competitive in the series, you had to win that first game. That did not happen, and now I think they're going to find a way to roll in that series. I think Brooklyn is the better team over the Nets. The Nets, and its margins not it was on 104 to 93. They won game one over Boston. But when you have multiple guys like Kyrie and Harden flirting with triple doubles and Durant, each of them scoring, I think, over 25, at least 20 points in the contest, they're going to be very, very tough to beat, especially in this series. Besides Jason Tatum, there's no major offensive threats for Boston. Now, Boston did get solid forms from Tatum. Reggie Williams had 9 blocks. He's not going to get 9 blocks in this next game. I think it'll be very, very tough for Boston to be competitive in it. Now it's Brooklyn and they like the coast, so it would not surprise me if Boston wins one game in this series, maybe even two. But I think that's a very, very tough situation, for the Celtics. Philadelphia defeated Washington 125 to 118. Tobias Harris 30 plus points in the contest, very big performance from him. I think the Sixers are once again, you look at that roster, and they're right up there. Now Brooklyn has the best starting lineup without question, well, especially because you have three of those guys, Harden, Durant, and Irving, all on the same roster, and they're playing together. That's a tremendous deal. But Philadelphia, you have Embiid, Ben Simmons, and if Harris, he's not going to score 30 points every contest, but if he can give you 20 plus points, that's a really nice squad. Curry is a good shooter on the outside for them as well. I think that's a very their championship. They should be right in that conversation for championship contention. I think Washington, they're just very limited. I mean, Westbrook and Beal are very, very good, but I think Westbrook he produces a lot of points and numbers, but he also causes a lot of turnover. He turns the ball over himself. The usage rate isn't great. And Beal, I don't know if he's 100%, and he's just not right. But I don't think Washington has enough to win this series. Now, it would not surprise me in game two if Washington wins it, because I think that they still have enough talent to make it interesting. But overall, I think that's going to be a win by the Sixers. The Knicks and the Hawks, I said it at the very beginning when we did our previous show previewing the series. It's a coin flip because I look at it this way. I think the Hawks have the better roster, and the Knicks have the best player in the series and play better defense. So I think that, and Yes, I know Trey Young hit the big shot, and we'll get to that in a moment. But I think if you're looking at the breakdown of it, you have the Hawks are a very talented team. Obviously, Trey Young hit, and we'll get to that. Let's get to the shot. I mean, if you watched it, very good situation for him. I like the fact that he drove to the basket, didn't settle for a long jumper. I mean, if Thibodeau is not going to double in that situation and get the ball out of his hands, take the player one on one down the into the lane and hit the runner. I thought that was a very good job by him. Big shots by both, and Bogey was getting hurt on Atlanta Hawks Twitter because he was not having the best game, but he hit some big shots. They John Collins had a very good first half, getting double digit points. Lou Williams reached double digit points in the third quarter. That was very big for him, big for the Hawks, getting those points off the bench. So you had all of the major players that you needed to for Atlanta, contributing. The Knicks got some very good play from several players. Randall had his points. He did what he had to do. I thought that it was his game. It's weird because it's not like he's forcing a lot, but he hits a lot of shots that you look at that should not go in. He'll shoot 3 pointers, kind of leaning to the side, and it looks like it's a very awkward position, and it goes in. He dribbles the ball between his legs and tries to drive, and you figure, all right, he's going too slow. Someone's going to take the ball from him, but he's still able to find a way to get to the lane. So it was just a very interesting contest overall. I like the fact that we have an enemy in in the contest with and Alex Burks. I was trying to remember his name, but I had to pull it up. Yeah, 27 points for Atlanta or for the Knicks in the contest. I don't know if he's going to be able to score 20 plus points, in the contest, but that's really the way that, and that was off the bench. That's really the way the Knicks are going to play. I think what they hope for. Randall, he had 15 points and 12 rebounds, which is solid. They want to get 20 plus points from Randall, and Barrett can hopefully get to 20 points. He had 14 in the contest, and everyone else chips in where they can, and they're just going to go on aggressiveness and defense and try to will their way to victories. While the Hawks just have more skilled players. Trey Young had 32 points and 10 assists for a double double, has seven rebounds as well. A very good performance from him. Bogdanovic had 18 points. Collins, as I mentioned, had the 12 and 7 rebounds. So they just Clint Capella had 13 rebounds, as well. They just you look at that roster. The Hawks just have a better team, but the Knicks play hard and very aggressive. I have picked the Knicks in 6. I gotta stick with it. But if Atlanta wins in 6, it wouldn't shock me as well. And then also with the Hawks fans, the complaining. Look, I know it's very and living here for the past few years, at least for the Hawks side of things. I think the Hawks have been well, not downtrodden because they've had playoff teams in the past. There's some franchises which have been really hurt over the past 10, 20 years. But they always feel like there's a conspiracy against them. And now that was illustrated as well with the Nate McMillan comment, about the NBA wanting to see the Knicks do well because it's New York and a big market and all that stuff. And which I don't believe at all. But I think that the fans, at least the ones on Twitter that I follow, are and just the social media and then talking to people, they're very like we get no foul calls. Why is this going on? Why is that going on? Why do they do like take a breath? And first of all, you have Trey Young, who and I said going back to Trey, and we'll move on to the other series. I like the fact that he is the villain. He's embracing it. He's not a rootable guy. He's a very good player. I shouldn't say he's not rootable. If you're from the outside in, I can see why people don't like him. He has a herky jerky style. He does flop a bit. He's a small guy. He does look to draw fouls quite a bit. Even his look, that very small, lanky look by NBA standards, it's just he's a guy that's very easy to. I'm saying out perception wise, Trey's actually pretty easy to root for and is very good to the media and all that stuff to us. But I can see from being a opposing fan and seeing him, you really want to boo him. But the fact that he hit the big shot, he did the mouth gesture and said it's quiet as F in here. I like that. And that's what and having the fans there being against him, that's a good thing. That's an energy, that's needed, I think, with everything that's been going on. Now, is he going to be able to carry the Hawks to the series win? Maybe, maybe not. But it's good drama. It's good theater. So that's very cool to see. I look at the Western Conference, the LA teams. I still think the Clippers and the Lakers get through to the next round of the playoffs, but they're on notice in a major way. You look at the Lakers and the Suns. The Suns were able to win game one, 99 to 100. I think that the fact that LeBron James and Anthony Davis are not 100% healthy puts them in a very vulnerable position. They've both been dealing with leg injuries the second half of the regular season, and they're not going to get better without rest. And you're in the middle of the playoffs, so you're not going to get that rest. The Suns are really the Suns were the second seed or the second best record in the West for a reason. Chris Paul, I know he hurt his shoulder in that contest, and I think he'll be able to play and be okay. I think he got the stinger, and he was hurting, and he had to finish that game out. I don't think you're gonna see him taking those shot put shot put jumpers and not be able to dribble the ball with his right hand in this contest. I think he'll be okay. Devin Booker has been an all-star, one of the better players in the league the past few years. He stepped up in his first playoff game, 30 plus points. DeAndre Ayton had a very big night, for the Suns, and that was much needed. 21 points, 16 rebounds, had more rebounds than James and Davis combined. That's a really, really good deal, for the Suns. And as I said, I still think the Lakers will find a way to win the series, but it just does not seem to be their year as far as championship aspirations go. And that sometimes happens. Injuries happen. And both of those guys are a year older, especially James. And this is a type of injury 10 years ago, James probably would have been able to shake off and be able to continue to play at a all-time level that he has been, but he's in his late 30s now. This is what happens, and he's just trying to work through it. I think the Mavs really good performance against the Clippers. I think LA, they're too cool for school. They're kind of like the Nets. But the problem is the Nets have three all-timers on their roster, and they can kind of find a way to coast through games. You look at the Clippers, they tried to do the same thing. And yet you look at the numbers. Yeah, Kawhi Leonard, 26 points, 10 rebounds. Paul George, 23 points, 6 rebounds himself. You had 4, 5 players in double figures, for the Clippers in the contest. But they just do not. And I know coming in, you look at the regular season, best 3 point shooting team in the league. They were very, very bad from the 3 point line. They only made 11 out of 43 pointers, 27% on threes. You look at the fact that they're supposed to be one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. They allowed the Mavs to shoot 47% from 3 point line, hitting 17 3 pointers, and then the Mavs shot 50% from the field in the contest. So those two things that we were supposed to bank on all through the year for the Clippers, hitting 3 pointers and then defending, they failed on both of those accounts and allowed Doncic to get a triple double once again. And he has triple double almost every game, playoff game he's had against the Clippers in his career. That can't happen. So I think that the Clippers ultimately will find a way to win because they have more depth in their lineup. But the championship aspirations may be very limited and short, for the Clippers. I look at the Nuggets and the Trailblazers. Series is tied 1-1. You saw Portland step up in game one, win 123 to 109. Denver rebounded and got a big win last night in game two. And I think this series 128 to 109. I think this series it ultimately comes down to it's gonna be 6, 7 games. Both these teams are evenly matched in their own ways. I mean, look at last night. Dame Lillard, 42 points, 10 assists in the contest. And then you look at Jokic, who had 38 points and 8 rebounds and 5 assists. I mean, both those guys are kind of going to, I don't say negate each other, but they'll kind of even each other out in their own ways. The question is, who's going to be the best of the secondary guys for Denver? Who's better? Going to be Porter and Gordon in that combination, and their kind of ragtag group of guys in their lineup, or is it going to be for the Blazers, Nurkic at center, McCollum, maybe even Carmelo Anthony coming off the bench giving you some points, Norman Powell. Who's going to be the better of the secondary guys? I picked Denver before the series. I have to stick with that. But Portland can win the series just as well. I think once again that's a toss up. I could see anything happening there, in that series. So it's just a lot going on with that. Oh, and then finally we have the the Jazz and the Grizzlies. Memphis, nice run here over the past few weeks. They're 9-1 in their last 10, and that includes the playing games. Remember, they had to defeat San Antonio at home and win at Golden State in the playing games just to make the playoffs. So they've been on a nice run. John Morant, tremendous performances by him. Game two is tomorrow, actually. But I think this one I picked the Jazz to win the series. And I think having Donovan Mitchell, they need him back in a major way. It was weird that he was unable to play in game one, even though he was practicing 3 days before the series opener. Now he missed the last month of the regular season due to a leg injury, and he's been trying to work his way back. He looked like he was cleared and ready to go or for game one, and then the Jazz sat him. They lost the game. Mitchell was very upset about it, made it public, but now it looks like he's going to play in game two. I would normally say once you have that dissension, it's bad news for any championship aspirations. But we'll see what happens in that series. I still think Utah is the better team, especially if Mitchell can give them, solid contribution. I mean, he's their best player. I mean, no Gobert is multiple defensive player of the year and may win it again this year. But Mitchell is the guy who gets everything going, especially on the offensive end. If they could have him back, that'd be a very solid situation for them. So those are my thoughts on the NBA playoffs and everything going on there. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what happens over these next few days.